We get live right now, man. It's going down. Excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Hello and welcome to Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast hosted by us, the members of Brew Hoop. My name is Riley Thelma, one of your usual co-hosts, joined as per usual by the typical Dear Diary crew, Adam and Kyle. Guys, how are we doing?
We're getting by. So that is where I'm at.
I'm doing all right. Just got back from a trip to Philadelphia for the past week. Didn't hear too much up there about the sad Sixers news, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time up there and didn't have to talk Sixers too much, so that was good.
They're grieving right now. They are grieving.
Yeah, it's rough.
Did Embiid suffer that injury on the road, or was he in Philadelphia? I saw a clip of it. Was it Golden State? I'm just trying to figure out. I'm trying to shoehorn a way for Adam to be in the conspiracy grassy knoll style situation. I know Kuminga's the one who fell on it, but I don't think we're going to be able to make that work, which is fine. But shout out to all the Sixers fans who years ago I promised I would never talk about or want to associate with ever again. That remains the case. But the Bucks, they're doing their own fair share of losing, hurting. They're not hurting physically, but on the record books, not exactly great since Doc Rivers took over. Since we last recorded, we had our emergency podcast. The Doc Rivers news was not official at the time. Pretty heavily hinted. We talked through it. Joe Prunty finished his tenure, and the past 4 games have been under Doc Rivers, 1-3 in that span. Some close losses in there, if you want to give it a positive spin. All 4 on the road, a Western Conference road trip. It started last week, a 113-107 loss to the Denver Nuggets. People are feeling pretty good. Tough team. Reigning champions on the road. Doc has literally never seen any of these people before. Okay, close loss. Damian Lillard's return to Portland's. Portland's pretty bad. It should be pretty special for Dame. Seemed like it was special, and then the Bucks crap the bed. They lose that one, 119-116. Brook Lopez gets the last shots, and then Giannis gets the inbounds to miss the free throws to lose the game. You know, not great. People are starting to get a little worried. People are starting to, around the neckline, finger on the neckline. Yikes. Then they go down by 24 to the Dallas Mavericks. And then they come back and win that one pretty handedly, 129-117 against literally everybody's expectations after the first quarter, understandably so. And then the back-to-back going up to Utah. Tough task. Down Chris Middleton, down Brook Lopez. They lose that one, 123-108, cruising for most of the game. Then it kind of fell apart in the fourth. You could blame tired legs.
Saying it nicely.
I think they scored 13 points. So it was not a really, 40. And they allowed 40. So it was not like the crispest close from the Milwaukee Bucks per se. So we're going to say mixed bag. We're going to get into the Doc Rivers tenure here. Tough. I'll preface my point before we get into it. Tough situation for literally any coach to step into. That doesn't necessarily excuse everything, but I'll be curious your guys' observations. I'll go to you, Kyle, because Adam's take it's too painful for the longtime listeners to have to deal with right off the top. So, Kyle, what did you learn about the Milwaukee Bucks this past week?
Good Lord, is Doc Rivers going to have to be perfect with his rotation, because the Denver game was peak. This bench sucks, and relying on this bench is going to be his downfall. No Andre Jackson Jr., no Marjon Beauchamp. Eventually gets to AJ Green, and look at what happened. Played AJ Green, the Bucks start turning around against Dallas. But I think a lot of it is the bench is already just like, you can't rely on them consistently. So, and maybe when it gets to the postseason, it might get a little bit easier because you won't have to play them as much. But yeah, Doc's going to have to get these rotations right, because playing Pat Connaughton, probably not a good idea. Playing Bobby Portis is a gamble, and it's kind of one that you have to do potentially. Campaign it's just not working there. Jay Crowder, that was it. I'm trying to remember if it was the Denver game or Dallas game, and I was ready to start packing his bags and send them to Tbilisi. I was really close. I think it was the Dallas game. I was ready to send him to Bill C. No, I think it's just hard because this bench is not helping Milwaukee, and it's going to be a problem. And Dak's going to have to get his rotation correct, because if he doesn't, we're going to see games like Denver, even the likes of Portland, and a little bit of the Jazz game where that bench is going to lose games. And like that bench alone is going to cost Milwaukee a lot of victories in the regular season.
As the week unfolded, I thought and wondered whether or not Doc Rivers might be a Dear Diaries listener, because he had the opportunity to show us what would be his 8-man rotation right now. The Portland Trailblazers game. Here's the 8-man rotation when everybody's healthy, everybody's available for Doc Rivers. If he was on the podcast, this is what he would say. Dame, Giannis, Chris, Brooke. Okay. Malik Beasley, 29 minutes of play. Bobby Portis, 22 minutes. Jay Crowder, 18 minutes. Pat Connaughton, 14 minutes. Campaign had 8 minutes in there. You can, if you want to expand it to 9, Doc's new. I'll give him 9 just because it's a hard exercise to do. That's the 8 to 9, 8.5, 9. When it's really put like that, you just kind of it makes you just kind of wonder about stuff. You know, it's and I'm not sure if I would say any of the young guys would necessarily be the solution in there. I don't see there being an obvious fit of, okay, Andre Jackson Jr. is going to go out there and he's going to make things up. I think it would be worth trying, especially in the Jazz game where guys are just really tired late. Could probably use a little bit more energy off the bench. But so far, it's been a super vet-heavy lineup. And ironically, the very first guy to get burned from Doc is AJ Green, who comes in and looks pretty good, especially since he's playing next to Pat, and the compare and contrast is pretty stark, but very super vet-heavy. And that's something that we had read about Doc is he has his guys. He doesn't really develop young guys. He trusts his veterans. We're just seeing that right away. And the question for me is this really how he wants to do it? Or is he trying to see what his guys are capable of? Is he trying to, like, in a extremely misguided attempt to raise guys' values, playing some dudes who are going to get traded a lot of minutes just to show something, I guess? So that not great in those terms, and bad performances from some
that's not
guys
helping.
not help on top of all that. Yeah, no, it's not. It's not just Doc.
I mean, looking at the bench from last year, right? Like, so, because I was just trying to even remember who we had on the bench last year. So, Joe, let's say we have Drew, Giannis, Brooke, Grayson, Chris, right? And Chris wasn't even available for a lot of the year. And then we had Bobby, Pat, Joe Ingles, Javon Carter, George Hill for a little bit, Wesley Matthews, Marjan. We felt at least slightly better about the bench last year, right? I would say so than we do about the bench right now.
Yeah,
I think even just the presence of Joe Ingles on his own for me, I think was enough. But I'm obviously an Ingles stan.
I think we did view it better because Pat was not washed at that point.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think Pat at least was given the benefit of the doubt. Javon Carter was a good come in, get your 15 minutes. You do your pull-up 3. I hate it with a passion, but maybe you make it. At least with Javon, there was something there. At least with Pat, he wasn't completely washed. Bobby was still, like, we knew the flaws, but you roll with Bobby. Wes Matthews was fine. George Hill was fine, but it was clear that he was, like, yeah, I feel like we felt better about the bench because Bobby and Pat didn't seem to torpedo their value and worth.
The other thing too is the defense, the perimeter defense in particular, was radically different from what we have this year. You run down the entire list of guys on the bench outside of Ajax a little bit, and even then he's a rookie who plays chaotically. Where's the point of attack defense? Where's the perimeter defense come from? Not a single person that I just named off there or who got DMP CD'd, I would say is capable. And then your starting 2 guards are also largely incapable of defending. Like, it's both the personnel, the talent level, but it was just stylistically completely different from what we're seeing this year. So that's has something to do with it as well. I can't look at the guys and say, oh, throw him out there because he's the guy who's the fix on the perimeter defense. It was just a different identity from the way we were playing last year, which has something to do with it. And now we don't really have a workable identity, I don't think, outside of Giannis do really well, and then hopefully somebody else steps up and saves us the rest of the way.
So Kyle, what were your thoughts in terms of what you think the rotation should be? If you were to give Doc some advice, whisper in his ear.
Stop playing Pat and just play AJ Green. Okay. AJ Green's doing everything that we want Pat to do. So just do that. Let's just give up on campaign because it seems like that's not working. Play Andre Jackson Jr. All right. Do that. I don't care if Brooks not playing. Do not play Robin Lopez ever. Like we're talking, that is a waste of a roster spot. Don't ever play Robin Lopez. And I think that would, at the very least, I will still hate the bench, but at least there's something I can look forward to. At least I can see AJ Green and be like, all right, I know what he's going to bring. And more than likely, I'll at least think he'll do it. Andre Jackson Jr., I will feel confident on what he will bring and that he will bring it. Jay Crowder, like that's the problem. If you look at the bench and if you want to include Malik Beasley, who do you have confidence in? Okay, if they go in and play, things are not going to go downhill. And it's like Jay Crowder, maybe, but I have his bags packed. They're right at the door. I got the lift. I got the Uber ready to go to drop him off at the airport. So Jay Crowder's a maybe. Bobby Portis, I can't rely on him at this point. Like some games he's going to give you, like some games like against Dallas, maybe, or even like last night against Utah. He'll give you something, but you can't rely on that. Pat, no. Campaign, no. Marjan, no. So it's kind of like maybe Jay Crowder, kind of Andre Jackson Jr., kind of AJ Green. But at the very least, with Andre Jackson Jr., AJ Green, there's still some upside. There's still some promise there. I don't have that feeling with campaign. I don't have that feeling with Pat Connaughton. So I'd probably take those two out and put Andre Jackson Jr. and AJ Green in.
What's really strange, too, about the young guys is who was it for the Nuggets last year? Was it a rookie who ended up playing something of a more than nominal role for them into the playoffs? I can't remember the guy's
Christian
name.
Braun.
Christian Braun.
Yeah, there it is.
So it's extremely, extremely rare that a title contending team, a title winning team is going to have a rookie who has any role at all, essentially. But the roster is so uneven, and that'll kind of be my point, but I'll stick on this. The roster is so uneven, and you know what everybody does, you know what they're going to give you. It's not necessarily working, or I wouldn't say working at a high enough level to say, oh, I'm really confident going to the playoffs. From Griffin kind of coming and going to some of the guys, Prunty, now Rivers, doesn't it behoove you, the coach, to try and get these guys mixed in a little bit just to give yourself options? Because the front office isn't helping you all that much right now. We'll see in the trade deadline, but your options are like these young guys who are the lotto tickets to see, okay, maybe Ajax plays a little chaotically, but maybe over the course of the season, he gets used to it. He finds some rhythms. He understands how to play in team defense and etc. Doesn't it just like behoove you? So that's something I've never fully understood. I mean, this is a Bud thing too. Hilariously, Sam Merrill is like, I've never talked to Bud, and now he's like carved out. I mean, yes, it's kind of a very specific role with the Cavs, but he's carved out a role, and it
took time to get there.
It took time, but like another team was willing to like take the flyer, take the lumps that comes with a guy who maybe has one specialized skill set, and then you build off of that. Like just practice time isn't necessarily going to get there. So that's what I've always been confused with the way we've approached it. Most coaches approach it. I get it. Playoffs, I'm probably not throwing out Marjan Beauchamp either, but it probably is good for you to give yourself options and give them reps out there. So that's what's confusing, and why, Kyle, I don't fault you for throwing those guys in the rotation, because they're maybes. We don't know fully. There's potential. And with the other guys, it doesn't feel like we necessarily have potential.
Yeah, I think the part is just more, I know Pat's not good enough. I know campaign's not good enough. I'm not sure if I don't know if Bobby's going to be good enough. And at this point, it's like, I know they're not. At least give me the guys where I there's a chance. there's a potential chance. I guess that's more what I look at it as. Take a gamble. Why not?
Yeah, it's a bad situation. What about you, Adam? What did you learn? We talked a little bit about certain somebody. What did you learn about the Milwaukee Bucks and their rotation and all sorts of things this past week?
So I need to be honest with the loyal listeners. I wrote in the Brew Hoop podcast outline what I learned was I might not have Pat Connaughton in my 8-man rotation. But as we talk through it, I might be starting to flip that because I don't know who else is going to replace him. I mean, I'm sorry. Here's what I'll say. You're both right. He looks not good. He looks a step slow. Okay, you're right. No, I'm the Pat stan. He looks not good. He looks slow on defense. He's getting cooked quite a bit defensively. I'm surprised that he's shooting 37% from three. I would have honestly guessed maybe 32%. If you look at the numbers, I'm just on cleaning the glass, minus 7.6 on-off differential. That's not good. In his defense, everyone on the bench is really bad. I mean, Campaign is minus 5.1. He's like the best of the bench players. That's surprising to me. That's not counting AJ Green and Marjon Beauchamp. But I guess for me, I might be at the point where I have to admit a bit of defeat on Pat Connaughton. Maybe there's some sort of playoff magic in there, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets moved at the deadline. And I can't say I can have a full-throated defense of Pat Connaughton anymore in my 8-man rotation. So it's a sad day for me.
Can you guys, and this is being completely dead serious, can you name for me one moment that seemed like, wow, that was a good play by Pat this entire season?
He had a good assist one time. I don't remember the game, but he had a good assist. I do remember like highlighting that.
Okay, if this is deadly serious, here's my thing.
Okay.
I think it's interesting because Kyle was talking about AJ Green earlier. AJ Green, and I think it was the Utah game, was starting to do basically the Pat Connaughton move, which is the inverted pick and roll with Giannis. And that's what Giannis and Pat, I would say, are best at. And that was working pretty well with AJ Green. I still think that is a good go-to move for Pat Connaughton. Also, Pat Connaughton made a decent cut in the Utah game. Did he make a shot off the pass? No, I don't think so. But I will say the one thing I can still commend him for is I think he still runs that inverted pick and roll with Giannis well. But like Kyle, AJ Green's kind of going on his corner, and I know I'm a little scared for the Kyle Carr AJ Green victory lap. That's going to be coming if he plays real rotation minutes for the rest of the year.
It's gonna be really messed up when AJ Green is named Finals MVP and Kyle gets to have his final vindication in front of the entire world.
They called me a madman at the beginning of the season. And yet, AJ Green is repaying my faith in him.
Kyle has seen the vision from literally day one. He's like what's weird about Pat is clearly there's been a physical decline because
I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Physical decline. And then it's paired with his poor luck. A coach that says, let's play a super aggressive, crazy defense on top of it. It's like, that's a quick way to make Pat look completely useless within the defense. So if we still played a relatively conservative defensive scheme, like a Bud scheme, I don't think the issues would be as glaring as it is. But for reasons of Adrian Griffin, we kind of are where we are with the base defense, or we were for much of the season. We're dialing back a little bit, but we've been without Brook for 2 games, so you can't even really get a sense fully of what kind of defense Doc wants to run. So I don't want to fully give up on Pat. If they trade him on Thursday, that I'm going to be A-okay. I'm sleeping like a baby. No problem at all. But I don't want to just say there's no way he can play because I still think there's a semblance of a decent player in there. It's just visually, it looks really bad. And he's trying, and it's just the scrambling is not going well for him. And again, offensively, it's kind of catch and shoot is his main thing. The drives aren't super there necessarily. And even if he gets the cut, he doesn't necessarily have the hops anymore to really make it happen in traffic or whatever, which is kind of a big downer. Like, we're not that far removed from Pat being in the dunk contest, but it's hilarious. Think about Pat Connaughton trying to dunk. It's just not going to happen. So I'm not going to wave the full white flag, but
it is interesting when you mentioned he's shooting 37% from three, which is pretty good for Pat Connaughton. And that's like the weirdest part. It's like, despite him looking awful in all facets, he is doing one of the main things that we expect him to do, is shoot the ball well. And come postseason, that's going to be very vital. So there is that slight hope. It's just hard to look at it when it's like, okay, 99% of everything you do is terrible, but this 1% is pretty good. And it's kind of like the situation with Bobby as well. It's kind of like, how much can you really power through and stomach the flaw, because what they can bring is very helpful. And that's kind of the tough part with Pat. It's like, yeah, defensively he's lost it, and a lot of it is athleticism, but if he's shooting 37%, like that's not bad. We would have taken that. Like, if you had said, hey, Pat Connaughton is going to shoot 37% from three heading into the season, we'd be like, okay, cool, great. But it's just everything else looks so rough that it kind of clouds it. And that's why it's like, I can see why you still have some little bit of faith, misguided as is, because AJ Green can literally do that. But we know, come postseason, Pat's probably going to shoot like 42%. We'll think, okay, we're good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing, right? Like, he has the experience, he's done it. And I think no matter what our offenses look like this regular season, I still am a little scared. There's the thing in my back of my brain that will just start missing every single shot come the postseason. I think the defense is really the biggest issue. I think he helped unlock a lot of the small ball lineups that were necessary. And now when you're looking at it, you could look at like a Dame, Pat, Chris, Jay Crowder, Giannis configuration. And now you may as well just say, well, if Pat's getting cooked on defense, why not just have Malik Beasley in there? He's a quicker shooter, a better shooter. Maybe it's probably a wash defensively. The one thing Pat might have is like a little more size and that kind of stuff. But at this point, Pat, just Pat's defense just hasn't looked quite up to snuff. And I don't know, maybe part of it is the whole defensive scheme. He was struggling with it, wasn't doing his thing. Like you said, Riley, maybe getting aggressive is not what he needs. And if they dial it back, it'll be okay. So I don't know. I think maybe he's back in my 8-man rotation, but I'm waffling more than I ever have on Pat.
And another thing in his credit in previous seasons was in the offense we were running. It wasn't my turn, your turn per se, but it was begging for somebody to be the connective tissue guy in the open courts, kind of, make quick decisions. Ball gets to him. It doesn't always have to be a catch and shoot. He can kind of drive with the ball. Grayson Allen did very similar. So he excelled in that because he still had a good, decent amount of athleticism, and also just the way that the three stars played. It's like there are possessions for these other guys to create something off of their own action. Be, like I said, the tissue of pass comes to them. They keep it moving to whatever. Like, Pat could shine in all those moments because obviously his basketball IQ is really great. Now we're in an offense where we don't even have a freaking clue what the balance between Dame and Giannis bringing the ball up the court is. And then Chris has to play third banana and everybody else is just kind of there. And the kickouts aren't as crisp as they used to be. So on top of all the issues with the aggressive defense, now the offense doesn't necessarily, probably could use, but it doesn't have as much of a place for a guy to really be the final connector. Again, small ball lineups or whatever. So that also, to Pat's detriment and not necessarily his fault, just like the personnel around him has changed and the approach that we're doing on offense now has changed where he's just more ineffective. Okay. I'll jump into mine then right away, since we're just bagging on the team. I sort of, we're not fully bagging, but the thing that was really driven home and has been driven home most of the season is the roster feels uneven. It feels out of sorts. And part of that is it's easy in hindsight to say, damn, had we unloaded these Pats and Bobby contracts at like when their value was really high, Lord knows what we could have gotten back in return. And it does not help that they're playing really poorly. But we still seems like we don't have a true backup big. I mean, Bobby is physically there, but defensively it's really bad. And this is a bad week for Bobby taking a lot of shots. He did better in the Mavs game than the Jazz game, but high Bobby usage. Pat who was supposed to be a linchpin in the rotation, has dropped off, and the style of play has passed him by a little bit. Malik Beasley would have been an awesome fifth starter in the previous Chris Drew Giannis molds, where it was like, oh man, just get Gunner guy. Then we traded for Dame, and it was like, shit. It's like we got Gunner guy with other Gunner guys, like Gunner guy point guard, and then Giannis who's going to get his shots up. And Robin, obviously, 2 roster spots, complete roster spots wasted on Robin and Thanasis because those guys are not true backup bigs. Jay had to come back to us on a minimum contract. That should have been probably more of a red flag than it was. Not his fault he got injured, but he didn't look great, and he's looked sort of iffy in minutes here. And he duplicates a little bit of power forward, backup big-ish, like unlock small ball, but it's not really clear that either he or Bobby can cut it. So I just look through and I say, probably could use a move or two. It's easy for me to sit at home and say, get a point of attack defender, get a good defensive guard, get a good backup big. Obviously, if it was that easy, they'd make it happen. But I think this past week, it helped in some sick sense running all those guys as many minutes as Doc did, because we showed what the weaknesses are, where the issues are. And I would be extremely surprised if Horst didn't try to get a deal across the line at the trade deadline. They've been playing footsie with Dallas about Grant Williams, which, I'm not sure if that's necessarily the fix, but you got to try, right? And I believe there was a report that Pat Connaughton and Campaign, who has done really nothing to deserve being thrown into trades, but he's going to get thrown into trades just because he's there, that are also on the market. So if Horst can get somebody playable for the bag of chips that we would be sending in a trade back to somebody, masterclass. But he also got himself into this trouble a little bit. So it just feels like, to me, uneven roster, really old guys. Everything's kind of coming back to bite us again. And this week did not help with my impression of that.
Did you know that Jay Crowder played 40 goddamn minutes last night?
Oh, God, that's crazy.
He played 40 minutes. He was 2 of 10 from the field and 2 of 7 from 3. And this is why his bags need to be getting packed right now. Since he's returned, Jay Crowder shot 32% from 3.
This goes back to the Doc thing, though, right? I was saying this right before we recorded. I feel way better about the team possibly winning a championship with Doc than I did with Adrian Griffin.
With Doc Rivers and Pat Connaughton.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. We got to keep that around. I think the reason I think it's because I feel like I haven't said one positive thing yet. Giannis is insane. He's having one of my favorite seasons in a while for him. It's awesome. Watching the Utah game was just, I feel like everything you want from Giannis, right? He played awesome defense, making amazing passes, really patient, not doing like very much of the dumb stuff that, I think we've been, I'll say, use an I statement, I've been on him for years that I don't enjoy him doing. He's been awesome. So there's still a really, really good chance because he could be the best player in any of these series. And I think when we've lost playoff series, he hasn't been the best player. And that's really like the only time we lose. So the thing with Doc Rivers that I kind of forgot is that he's just going to go with the veterans. And that's been playing out. And it's just, that's crazy, Kyle. 40 minutes for Jay Crowder seems reckless. On the second night of a back-to-back, like, I don't even really see the rationale for that. And I think that, like, it's a little funny that he's not even willing to try some of these younger people. Like, aren't there assistant coaches on staff who are like, yeah, we have seen Marjan Beauchamp for a year and a half, but I know you don't trust us at all, Doc, to say anything. Like, wouldn't you want to rely on these people like a little bit to be like, let's spell him for a second here and throw Andre Jackson Jr. or whatever? Like, and I don't necessarily need, like, I don't want to be the guy that's like, throw the young guys out there. We need young guys because, frankly, that's more exciting. Like, that's more exciting to me during a regular season game than watching Jay Crowder. But on some level, that it won't be sustainable for the team to play the veterans this many minutes for the rest of the season. The Bucks have been super healthy outside of Jay Crowder, so we've been pretty lucky so far this whole year. So I'm just surprised and kind of needed to remind myself that there's probably going to be a lot more rigidity in the rotations than we had gotten used to for the first part of the season.
To be fair to Doc, Chris and Brooke both sat, so he kind of needed somebody to be the in-between. And Jay did get 3 personal fouls in about 4 minutes in the Dallas game, so he did get to sit a lot of that game out with foul trouble. So just to give Doc a little bit of cover. And a technical to get himself onto the bench, which is great. With Jay, the 3... Do you feel like, so I guess like here's the come to Jesus moment, right? It's like right now in their current iteration, do you feel more comfortable running the Bobby Portis minutes or the Jay Crowder minutes? Like
Jay
which
Crowder.
of those two? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me.
Ironically, even though I want to send him over to Baku
abroad. Yeah. You really want Jay to see the world, is what you really want him to go on a world tour.
I'm gonna complain about Jay Crowder minutes, but I'll deal. It's just really, oh God. Sending him to Tanzania.
Well, back to your point about Giannis, Adam. That's why it can be so frustrating because he is undoubtedly at the superstar peak now, where you can pencil him in for 30 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists or whatever. Those might be a little high, but you can pencil him to like against any opponent, no matter how slow going it gets. Like he's going to get his, and it's not going to be like he needs 40 shots to get there. I mean, he's just powering through defenses, no problem. Which is why it's frustrating that Dame can be a little wishy-washy. Like obviously the averages are still really good, but I think a part of me was like, oh, we're gonna have 2 guys who are at that level, and one's gonna be a guard, and one's gonna be a big. And what the fuck is anybody going to do to stop us? And that's not been the case. So I think that's a little frustrating. Chris has been, I think, really good as the third banana guy with mid-range tough shots. Again, being a connector. If there's going to be somebody out who's the connector, Chris is the one. In the Dallas game to start getting us going in the second quarter, he went to the pick and roll with Giannis, got us a couple of possessions, a couple of baskets. Okay, now we chip back into it. Like Chris is reliable. Brooke is out there, which is, he's fine, I guess. But it's frustrating because then you get to the bench and things drop off. Bobby is playing the way that you would normally expect Bobby to, but the defense is just as bad as it's always been. And when he says it's Bobby time, unless it's a Jazz game, in which case you need somebody to take a lot of shots, it's just detrimental to the team generally. And I don't know, Malik is kind of a one-way guy. Like there's just not a lot of optionality, which is why it's frustrating because you don't want to see Giannis, so many great Giannis performances wasted, even if it's understandable in the context of they're on the road. They literally just fired the coach a week and a half ago. They're trying to figure this out on the fly, like blah, blah, blah. But that makes it extra frustrating. So even if you can dismiss the 1 and 3 and say, kind of bad schedule, you just want to win them because Giannis is really putting the team on his back pretty much every night, and it's kind of come or go who the rest of his teammates do, which is the same it's been for years now, which I guess is kind of frustrating to everyone.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's the manner that they've lost these games as well. The Denver one, it was kind of okay, you're on the road. It's against Denver. Denver's the defending champs. But it felt like you could have won this game because Denver didn't shoot the ball well from 3. They were only 4 of 18. Jokic was good, but Jokic was not. It wasn't Jokic that was absolutely destroying him. Jamal Murray played freaking great, but it was kind of like it was Jamal Murray. Jokic was doing Jokic stuff. Michael Porter Jr. was meh, but this was a game you could have realistically won. But you look at Giannis. Giannis does what he needs to. Chris Middleton, 6 of 10. He did what was asked. Brook Lopez shot really well, 5 of 9 from 3. And like if it weren't for Brook Lopez, this game would have been a blowout. Dame was okay, but again, with Dame, it's like you get the good, you get the streakiness, but you look at it was just like you kind of got to the bench. And it's like Jay Crowder 1 of 3 didn't really do much. Bobby was 2 of 3. Like this was a bad Bobby game, and were it not for 2 threes in the fourth quarter, this like Bobby was sabotaging the team. But it was like you could have won that game. Okay, fine. It's against Denver. Again, you can live with a close loss to Denver on the road. Not going to be too much of a concern. But then you're looking at the Portland game, and that was a game where it's like it started bad, it got a little bit better, but it just ended poorly. And that was one of those games where Milwaukee probably, like, those are the games that you need to win just because the talent is better. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts on it. And then we get Dallas. Dallas goes well. Starts terrible, but Dallas ends well. And absolutely, if you go from basically the midway of the second quarter to the rest of the game, Milwaukee dominates Dallas. Okay, cool. And then you get to this Jazz game, and then it's kind of like, again, all right, things are going well. Things are going well. And then the fourth quarter just completely falls apart. And that's just another one where it's like, it's really hard to understand. And I mean, a lot of the issues that were there when Adrian Griffin was coach is still there with Doc Rivers as coach. I mean, the defense sometimes just cannot seem to get a stop to save their life. Sometimes Dame is not going to have a good enough game to help you. And who else is going to step in and fill that void? Sometimes that bench is going, and I think that's kind of the hardest part. And I can't necessarily blame Doc for, a lot of these issues because these issues have been there all season. But it's a little frustrating when you're going vet heavy. But I will say Doc's adjustments in the Dallas game gave me some hope that, like, okay, at least he's going to see this and be like, we're going to try this and we'll see if it works. And then it did. And that gives me, like, there were times in the Portland game where they made adjustments and did things differently. That at least gives me some, I'll be positive. There were definitely things that Doc was trying to do that gives me a little bit of hope of, okay, that helps. But it just feels like this could have easily been a 3-1 week and not a 1-3 week.
Doc going with the small ball lineup and making Giannis the primary defender. It was like, okay, it didn't take Doc long, like other coaches, to figure out this is going to be the cheat code to like ultimate sustainable success in the playoffs, especially. We're not going to see that a ton throughout the regular season because of the wear and tear on Giannis. I think you could even see it in the Jazz game where like he's efficient scoring, but it takes a toll. Like if he's going to be the nominal center, it's just tough to play both ends and to be really high level. But in the Dallas game, again, relatively straightforward. You shut down, try and trap Luka, and then force the other Mavericks to beat you, and they just weren't shooting well anymore. But you have to trust Giannis that he can defend Luka in space, not get called for a million fouls, and like follow through on it. And it worked. Like, okay, now let's see where that gets used again. So that's the other thing, credit to Giannis, of he gets the call finally for the first time in a long time. Giannis, you're going to cover the other star wing, make it happen. And he does. And maybe that's, again, something that we'll see as the season goes along, and maybe clears up a lot of the trouble because you do the small ball and you just have to ask Giannis, hey, I know you're doing a shitload on offense already, but can you also carry us on defense? And Giannis is at the type of talent that can do that, even though it'll wear a guy down. But again, then you just have to worry about, is everybody else going to be able to pull just enough weight to make it like worth Giannis's while to put in all that much effort? But at least Doc has found it. Like, it didn't take him long. He was kind of forced because it was either that or Robin Lopez, but he found it. So shout out to you, Doc, for that.
Yeah, I think Doc has been, I hesitate to use the P word process, but a lot of these games have been pretty close. This Utah game, I would say, notwithstanding, it just kind of seemed like, well, Doc put the starters in with like 8 minutes left. No wonder they're going to crap the bed late, because Utah just kind of had it rolling and they were going to do their thing. But these are a lot of games that the Bucks might have won early in the year. And I know we all loved like the clutch narrative, but honestly, a lot of times that's just kind of luck. And that was just going to kind of come back to bite them.
How dare you?
There was statistics that said otherwise. Damn it!
You're going to tell me the Tooth Fairy isn't real next. How dare you?
Yeah, something about Dame being like, yeah, but I lock in for the last 5 minutes of defense, just like never sat quite right with me. But here's the thing, right? Like, there's just a few things that are really nice to see. I would say they still screw up plenty of stuff defensively, but I thought the rotations, frankly, just look better. They just look like they kind of know what they're doing a lot more often on that end. And yes, there's stuff where they get got, but I think they're doing better with that. I think most of the time they're getting spat back a little bit better transition defense wise. I think that already looks a little bit cleaned up.
Absolutely.
I like offensively. I liked in the Utah game until it stopped working with Bobby. I don't necessarily need to see this with Bobby, but Doc Rivers just being like, yeah, we're just going to run the AJ Green Giannis inverted pick and roll like 3 or 4 times, just like run it till it doesn't work. And I like that. I think maybe that won't always work in the fourth quarter if the other team has changed, but this team has lacked so much structure for so long offensively that I like a coach who's like, why don't you guys just keep doing that? Like, it doesn't have to be that hard. Just keep doing the thing that works over and over. You're very talented. So those are like very simple fixes that I think already have helped the team on some level, put them back on the path where I feel like, okay, I can see them moving at least towards a team that I feel better about that could possibly contend in the Eastern Conference.
No, I fully agree on the transition defense. It has been night and day difference with Doc being there as opposed to Agent Griffin. The Portland game was probably the biggest one that stood out because I think in the Portland game, they only allowed like 5. They did not allow that many. I don't know if it was the Portland. One of the games, it was Portland or Denver. They did not allow a lot of fast break points, which is shocking because Milwaukee committed so many bad turnovers. It was a Portland game because Milwaukee had a stretch where they allowed like 6 turnovers in 2 minutes, and it was the worst basketball you'll ever watch. But even then, they did a good job at transition defense and not allowing Portland to get it. So that is something that I have been impressed with. And that is something that is huge if they, because we would say, how many times would Milwaukee, if they had just gotten back on defense, it would have been better. And then now we see it. And in the Portland game, they had allowed 9. It was 9 points, 9 fast break points that they allowed to Portland, which is, Portland is a team that likes to get up and run. And Portland has young enough players where I think under Adrian Griffin, they would have completely exploited it. But they did a pretty good job. So I will give Doc credit for that. He seems to have at least gotten them to get back on defense, which is something that we had not seen. So at the very least, on the defensive side, that's one thing that you could say, that's not terrible.
I should note, so over the last 5 games, it includes the last Prunty game, but the Bucks went from the bottom third defense. They've now edged up to 14th over that 5-game stretch, which is small sample size, but indicative of it's not a complete tire fire compared to the rest of the league, which I think is a positive. The question will be, is there enough time left in the season for him to put something in other than get back on defense, try to be a little bit stronger on the perimeter, like a little bit more of a conservative approach, things like that. So that's the real question, is how much control does Doc have? Like, he can organize things. And I think Dave Yeager is also known as a really good assistant in terms of defensive X and O's. So it's really the question of, it's like a race against time, which is the unfortunate part. And on top of all that, outside of the All-Star break, I just checked. So there's 32 games left. It's a even split right down the middle, 16 on the road, 16 at home. I looked through, I mean, in terms of gimmies, games that I would expect them to win, it would be really dejected if they lost. It's 3 against the Hornets, 1 against the Bulls, and then where's the other one? 1 against the Raptors. Oh, there's a Wizards game. So 6 games that I would call like gimmies. Everything else is kind of like tough. So we are going to find out on the fly here whether or not this is actually going to work. So that's the other thing too, is the record was indeed inflated in the first half of the season, because we did play a relatively easy schedule compared to where we're at now. So shout out to you, Doc, for having horrible timing taking. I guess it's really John Horst's fault, or maybe Doc's fault for not telling Horst to can Griffin earlier. But picking it up at like the hardest point in the season to possibly grab it. So any other, we didn't have a Buck the host this week, so we were kind of just talking, Doc. Any other thoughts about the team, Doc Rivers? Any other observations from the week that was?
I'm still not sold on him, but minor baby step of progress towards approval.
Hey, that's pretty good. I feel
still gonna complain a shitload, but baby step.
We need you for that. I think I'm glad that the schedule is hard. I don't need to see gimme games in this lead up. Like, is the team going to win a championship or not? I don't give a crap. Can you beat Boston? Yes or no? Like, there's no excuses anymore. They have Giannis. He's playing amazing. They have Giannis and Dame. Go out there, see what you can do. Who knows if they're going to do it or not, but I'm going to enjoy having meaningful games, I feel like, down the stretch to actually pay attention to, that I think will be pretty informative. The only thing I was wondering about, I know you both did the trade deadline preview show, but anything else for the trade deadline coming up that you're interested in this week?
I I don't think the Chris Middleton for Kuminga Wiggins deal is going to happen. I don't see that in our future, though. I
Why
appreciate
not?
Kyle's gum.
Why not?
Again, they called Kyle a madman, but he just saw the vision from way outside.
I'm just saying, what do you got to lose at this point?
I would be exceedingly surprised if they didn't make a move, and I would be triple surprised if Pat or Bob, like one or the other, are not gone by Thursday afternoon. Mostly because they make the right amount of money, and for all the mitigating factors, they have not played super duper well this season, and those are just obvious upgrades. So I don't have a target. I saw like DeLon Wright was a guy. It's fine, whatever, I guess. We'll see. But I would be surprised if they didn't make a move. But who it's going to be, I don't have a freaking clue.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a campaign and Marjan and one of Pat and Bobby getting traded for something, even if it's going to be some dude and a bunch of draft picks. Like I don't think I'm expecting a trade because John Horst always makes a trade. I don't think it's going to be a needle mover kind of trade. It's not going to be like a big splash kind of thing. It's just probably going to be we got to try something else and hopefully we get something out of it.
It like literally couldn't be worse than the Serge Ibaka trade. So it can only really go up from here that we complete. I mean, talk about
that one looks
blowing
worse
it.
and worse. Yeah.
Every single day. I mean, shout out to Dante, our original fan club here. That was our first podcast in this iteration, was the Dante DiVincenzo. So keep killing it, Dante. You found your place in New York.
To be
City.
fair, it's not necessarily the fault that we got Serge Ibaka. It was just that Shemi Ojeleye and Rodney Hood were that bad that they had to go.
If you look at that whole season, just GM transactions, John Horst was in the opposite of in his bag.
And they probably could have made a run if Chris Middleton was healthy, and that's the dumbest part about all of that. They were up 3-2.
It was just really bad all the way through. The final note I have from the Bucks week, as the resident, I wouldn't even call myself AJ Green hater, just doubter, undersized guy, mostly to play as a foil as Kyle's hero worship of AJ Green. My guy can set a screen like nobody else on this team can, apparently. Adam was talking about the inverted picks. There's a reason why AJ Green's the guy, because he looks beefy and he is willing to stand in there and take it to free. Who else on the team? The other one would have been Bobby, and Bobby can't help but like shove the player and like give himself an opportunity to get called for an offensive foul each time. There's nobody else on the team who sets a pick like AJ Green. So if you can shoot the ball and set a pick, you're A-okay in my mind. So shout out to you, AJ Green. I hope you continue to get rotation minutes, and especially after Pat is gone, you're going to get a lot of rotation minutes. So shout out to you. Okay. Anything happens on the trade deadline, I'm sure if it's big, we'll do a little emergency podcast, but curious to see what John Horst does. We're nothing settled just yet. We'll go right over to miscellaneous rapid fire. Quick one this week. A couple of quick questions, I should say. So a lot of talk this week about Pat, the downfall. I don't even want to call it a downfall. I keep being very dramatic. I'm sorry, Pat. As Adam hangs his head. My question is, let's say this is the end of the road for Pat, right? It's not this current iteration of the organization, but under the Herb Cole ownership, let's say throwback Bucks, rest in peace, Herb Cole. Would Pat have gotten his number retired if the old Bucks were still in charge, if that was how we were doing things? Do you think Pat would be number retirement worthy after his stint with the Bucks?
No, but I think they would have had like a big event for him. If he were like get traded or retired and came back, I think they would have done a lot, like a big thing for him. I don't think they would have retired his number though.
Okay.
He would have purchased space in the rafters and leased it out to someone to stand there each night.
I just want to live in the world where Pat Connaughton's real estate property holding company owns one of the naming rights to one of the suites in Fiserv Forum. Let's make it happen. You know, let's keep Mr. Milwaukee alive, even if he's in some other city rotting away. I don't think he would have gotten his number retired. I'm just being facetious and dramatic. Okay. I'm sure we've talked about this, but if we have, it's been a while since we last talked about it. Ideal pizza toppings. And you can tell me what kind of crust you like it on as well, if that's critical to how you make your toppings work. But ideal pizza toppings.
I would say pepperoni. I am okay with pineapple on pizza, so I'm gonna put that on there. I will fight anyone that grow up, fucking grow up.
Just with pepperoni is weird. If you did the Canadian,
No,
ham,
it's gonna
I get
have
that,
pepperoni. There's gonna be pineapple, and then like chicken. I feel like that's a good balance. Like the chicken is kind of like a very simple neutral flavor. You get the sweetness with pineapple, and then you kind of get like the savory with the pepperoni. And then you put some Parmesan cheese on top of it.
Did you say what kind of crust you're going for? Sorry.
I'm good with any crust, but I prefer a thick crust, like a pan crust.
Okay.
I'm a thick crust man as well. There was this pizza place in Philly that had this amazing eggplant, ricotta, and olives and capers pizza that was truly sublime. If I'm making one at home, I want pepperoni, green olives, because I like the acidity, and then a little ricotta cheese on there.
Do you like Manhattans, Adam? Do you drink Manhattans at all? Is it
No, I don't even.
Not Manhattans. Martinis.
Oh no, I've never even had a martini.
Interesting, especially with the olive juice. Oh, I mean, it just has the olive juice in them, so yeah, they're fine.
Yeah.
So I would just figure since you're into the olives, that's all. Yeah,
that does sound good. Okay.
I probably also go thick crust. I'm a simple, straightforward man. It's sausage, pepperoni, like a supreme minus the olives because I don't like olives on my pizza. And if I'm gonna get a little crazy, I'm throwing either banana peppers or jalapenos on there because I like a spicy pizza.
Banana peppers are great. Yeah,
banana peppers. They're a good zig to the rest of the pizza's zag, in my humble opinion. Okay. There's not been really any news in months since we heard a little rumor, a little birdie talking, but let's just say buyout market happens and the return is back. We're reunited with PJ Tucker. Does he automatically make your 8-man rotation right now?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I like the news. Yeah, I like the news that he was trying to force a trade. I was like, why is PJ Tucker trying to leave like the second or third best team in the West who have looked really good? Is he not playing? He must not be playing, I guess.
No, he's not.
Okay, well, that would be the reason.
And no, that's nostalgia kicking in for people. No,
Kyle firmly does not believe one man's trash is another man's treasure when it comes to PJ Tucker, apparently on the bio market.
Look, if someone will take our trash, great, but that's not happening. Yeah. I'm already got Jay Crowder's bags packed. I don't need to turn on PJ Tucker and get his bags packed. Okay.
Kyle wants to have his last memory of PJ being wee dogs and then going bar hopping. I understand for nostalgia reasons. I obviously, yes, he would be inserted immediately into the 8-man rotation. And I mean, every
I've really
day
taken on just the ultimate hater of this team.
We get closer to 40 with every passing day, and yet. And it would be very ironic for us to do this whole sojourn where he goes to Miami, Philly, and LA just for him to end up back here. So I guess narratively it's probably for the best if he doesn't. Okay, final question. We'll see based on the trade deadline, but who sees more minutes the rest of the way of this season? Marjan or Andre Jackson Jr.? They've both seen, besides a couple of garbage minutes together against the Jazz, they have seen the floor not at all.
Andre Jackson Jr. because I feel like he's more likely to stay on this team.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. I'm fully expecting Marjan's jerseys to go 50% off Friday. Ship one right to Riley's house.
Riley's going to get the footage of the next series. Chosen Child.
Yeah, that Holy Child Part 3 is going to be off the chain, where he records him doing an interview in like a all carpet basement in a chair with low lighting, talking about what it was like to be traded, but he still believes in himself.
There's going to have video footage of him getting the call saying he's getting traded.
I can't even imagine like I mean, I have no sense of the guy at all because I don't have the strength of will to watch his like actual videos, but I don't. Yeah, he's probably gone, to be perfectly honest. It would be a real bummer if both of them were gone, but the unfortunate part is Pat has been looked so bad relative to expectations, and Bobby's been kind of a little bit of a black hole that you kind of have to throw one of those guys in for a sweetener. So hopefully we get something good on the way back. All right, that's all I had for rapid fire. We'll just jump right in. I don't have ink review, Kyle doesn't have film review. That's okay. Shorter week compared to last week. 3 games. The road trip out west finally comes to an end after essentially a whole week. They're in Phoenix on Tuesday, tonight when you get this podcast. Then they come back home. They face the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then they do a back-to-back at home against the Charlotte Hornets on Friday. Kyle, what say you for the Bucks record this week?
I'm gonna say 1-2. Phoenix is gonna be tough. Minnesota is gonna be tough. I think they do beat Charlotte, though. I feel confident in that one.
Adam,
I'm gonna go 2-1. I feel like I was pretty positive on this podcast, so I'll keep optimistic here. I think they're probably gonna lose in Phoenix. They almost never win in Phoenix, besides when they really needed to win in the finals. And then
the one game they did win.
Yeah, that was great timing. I think they can beat Minnesota. People get all excited about it, and then I think they can beat Charlotte on Friday.
this is messed up after all the mess I just talked about. I think they're going to go 3-0. They're going to win it for Doc this week. Think of how much work they'll have gotten in for shoot-arounds before the Suns game and how much of a difference that'll make for the team. I think hopefully full health Brooke will be back. It's Phoenix is sort of a weird team, weird kind of paper contender too. So I think I hope Dame will show up big for that one. Timberwolves kind of weird, two big lineup. I feel like we'll be able to survive that. And then if we lose against the Hornets, it's a travesty. So I'm going to guess 3-0. They will promptly lose all 3 games, and we'll be back here a week from now, post-trade deadline, trying to process it all together. But I thank you guys for joining. I thank everybody for listening. Leave us a review if you like the podcast. Otherwise, please keep it to yourself. Like it, share, subscribe, all of that. You can find us over on Brew Hoop game coverage, Monday morning media roundup, Wednesday weekly wrap up, questions and antlers, which may or may not still be happening. I'm not sure. The various Tuesday trackers, the results on Friday. We have the content, folks, over at brewhoop.com. Thank you guys again for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week.